Hey everybody, it is June 6, 2025, and I'm here with your after hours recap. Obviously, there's a little bit of movement here on my screen. Big dump, big rip on Hood. I don't actually see the news yet, but my guess is maybe some S&P 500 inclusion news. Not necessarily sure. Just kind of to recap a little bit of what happened yesterday. Obviously, it was a meme market. Trump and Elon going back and forth. It started a big cascade waterfall in Tesla, which, we can go ahead and take a peek at one more time. Very, very unusual kind of a move. Big pickup in volume. And, makes me very thankful that I was able to sell my shares at 330. You see a move like that and, some people just freeze. So it sucks, but it happens. The market's known to do things like this every now and again. Really nothing notable. Mega caps continue to act well. Individual stocks continue to act well. Some stocks that got a little bit of ahead of themselves, like, call it SE, finally starting to pull in just a little bit. These names that have just gone vertical need some digestion. Stock like Roblox, in my opinion, is just starting to get a little bit absurd. Does it just go and test 100 and fail? And I don't know. I don't want to use the word fail. It just needs digestion. That's exactly what these things need. And it's not, again, just like a Roblox. There's plenty of names that have gone frozen rope style. Obviously, Zscaler being one of them, Sezzle being another, Dave being another. And some of these names have done exactly that, right? They're just effectively up every single day. I mean, Sezzle is just nuts, which is, again, shows you the power of just trimming some into strength, trailing on an ascending moving average. Really, really nice action from Palantir today, being able to take an ugly down day yesterday on a pickup in volume and just bounce back today right back over the 20 simple moving average. Feels like this just needs the 50 to catch up a little bit more, digest a little bit more, and then over $135 could very well be viable going forward. Today a few actions for me was I was actually eyeballing Shopify. It was actually one of the first names that I mentioned in the room, and sure enough, this thing just all day trend higher. But what I did do was I bought ARK, and I took a stop out on this thing yesterday. I tried to buy it as it was breaking out, completely failed. Again, it was due to the market, right? It wasn't due to I thought that this thing looked horrible. It was just, when Tesla's going down and it's a big holding, when Palantir's going down and it's a big holding, and then effectively the market just kind of starts coming undone a little bit yesterday. ARK just followed right along. But this morning, I made a tweet and I said, some big buying volumes coming in to ARK, and you could just see it right at the open, just this big buying pressure. And you compare it to the prior day, I was just seeing that and I was just like, okay, starting to break out, you're starting to get this really big buying pressure. I bought it 59.04 for myself, and then just acted absolutely spectacular all day long. So really, really nice to see from ARK. I don't know any one of her top 10 holdings that had a red day today. Obviously, the bounce back in Tesla a little bit. Palantir act well. I saw CRISPR green. I saw Archer going in after hours. You've got Hood is in there. So everywhere you look, Kathy's portfolio was just rocking today. It was my only long that I took. Really nice to see. And then a few more actions that I took was I kind of noticed across the board when you looked at gold futures, gold futures were acting weak all day long, and it wasn't just that one. It was wheat and precious metal, it was AEM, it was NEM, it was all of them down the line. And so instead of just letting my KGC pull all the way back on me, potentially into the 20 or the 50, I just said, what? You got to remember, birds of the feather flock together. When you start to get a few signs that the whole group is coming down, take your money, let it reset back up, let it tighten up, let it set you a low risk spot, and then get involved again. I bought this thing mid 13s, and I'm not just going to sit here and watch it retest the 50 simple moving average. I would go ahead and, commodities tend to be a bit choppier. Look to buy them off of an ascending moving average when the group's acting well. Today, the group wasn't acting so well. Gold has been on quite a sustained run. When you look at something like KGC, so nothing wrong if KGC just built a longer base. Gold didn't do anything, and I think I can come back for it a little bit down the road. But I didn't want to get greedy. Just took my money and I ran. Toast is the other one that I thought was acting pretty well today, and I moved up my stop to yesterday's lows. TMDX got a little bit extended from the 50, so I did go ahead and reduce some more in TMDX. And then Netflix again got extended from the 50. I did go ahead and reduce some more. So down to just trailing size in TMDX and Netflix. I will be trailing those on the 20 simple moving average, looking for clean and constructive setups to try to participate in. ARK, I thought, was one of those. Shopify, again, was another one of those today. Didn't take Shopify, but nice to see that follow through again. Shopify is another ARK top 10 holding, along with Hood, Palantir, Tesla, Roku, CRISPR, Archer Aviation, and a couple others. So nice to see that Kathy's names are all bright green. I'm now a big Kathy Wood supporter, so a cheerleader. And like I said, I didn't really see anything today that looked out of the ordinary. Stocks that are leading continue to lead. Stocks that are extended, are starting to digest, maybe like an SE. And, HIMS had a decent little bounce back today. The quantum stocks, QBTS continues to hold up very, very well. Meanwhile, my Rigetti does absolutely squat. So continue to stay short. Rigetti is what I am. I own it from 14. I did cover another little piece today. No harm. And I don't know if we did just or didn't get S&P 500 inclusion news, because it kind of looks like, Hood is really, really ripping, and it looks like Carvana is slightly coming down. Again, don't really care. Won't be placing any trades on these right now, but we will have a refresh week. Take the time, make sure you're scanning, and kind of come into Monday morning with a plan. Like I said, for me, I'm still bullish. I'm looking for charts that look like Shopify, charts that are nice and tight. And like I said, I mentioned this one before I even mentioned ARK in the room. And, this thing, again, really, really nice trend. Could it still be buyable come Monday? Yeah, I think it's possible. I think, it looks to me like Shopify wants to go higher. It does feel like it could be one of those stocks that can lead. And I would like to get myself positioned in this name. And again, several others. I think Palantir could be buyable again. I think Take-Two looks pretty good. I'm comfortable trying to add more to Toast. If TMDX would tighten, I'd add some to that. So, there's tons of merchandise out there. I just think it's, you have to wait for some of these to tighten up. Some of them have gotten a little bit ahead of themselves, and we just have to take it one day at a time, see if the market rewards you for going long, and today it definitely did on ARK. So working behind some traction on a new position, that's always a good feeling. That allows me to come in on Monday, look for another, build upon that progress, and make sure you're peeling some into strength when stocks violate your levels. Make sure you're getting rid of it or using your proper sell tactics. And I didn't argue with Uber, and it's done nothing since I sold it. I didn't argue with Tesla a few days ago, and it got absolutely obliterated the next day. So sometimes you're gonna sell one a little early, like Palantir, and then it's gonna go on without you. And some days you're gonna sell one just right with Tesla, and it's going to get obliterated the next day. So you got to take the good with the bad. That's just what comes with the territory. Like I said, if you've been trying to buy stocks for, I don't know, the last 10 days, it's been very difficult, very choppy, tough environment. And then I guess final thing that I'll say is I noticed AVGO on earnings yesterday, obviously had the down day, closed at the lows of the day, closed right at the 10 simple moving average. Again, no real opinions from me, but, it kind of put a little bit of pressure on NVIDIA. No big deal. This thing still needs to digest under that 143, let the 50 simple catch up. But on the flip side of that, I noticed stocks like ASML, and again, this one didn't close all that well, but starting to establish itself above the 200, KLAC, and LRCX. So, some of these names are starting to establish themselves above the 200. Again, not the best closes Again, no opinions, but they are starting to establish themselves above the 200. That is important. We would love to see semis participating in the continued bull run. So, again, guys, no opinions for me. Please take it one setup at a time. Use progressive exposure. You can't just go from 0 to 100% invested overnight. It's just not the right way. I don't think it'll ever be the right way. You have to, if you can't gain traction with 10% of your account or 30% of your account, what makes you think you're going to gain traction with 100% of your account? It's much easier to make money when everybody's making money, right? And you're trading your biggest when you're trading your best and the market is friendliest. And you're trading your smallest when you're not seeing things well and the market keeps giving failed breakouts. And like I said, it's not that the market's been giving failed breakouts. It's just that new positions have been tough to come by, and then the best names in the market have just gone vertical. So continue to be patient, and I hope you guys have an awesome weekend. Please be safe out there, and I will see you guys Monday morning for pre-market prep. Cheers.